Have you ever fallen so deeply into something, music, prayer, love, silence, that time simply vanished? Not slowed down, not rushed forward, vanished. You looked at the clock and an hour had passed. But inside it felt like no time at all. Now imagine that experience, not for minutes, but in its most absolute form. Yogic texts describe a state called Samadhi where time does not distort, it stops. Stay with me till the end because when we understand why time disappears for a yogi, we may discover that time itself is not what we think it is. What Samadhi really is. Samadhi is often translated as absorption, and that word is too small. It is not hypnosis, not trance, not imagination. It is the complete stilling of mental fluctuations. What classical yoga calls chitta vritti nirodha, in this state awareness remains, but the thinker dissolves. There is perception, but no commentator. Experience, but no experiencer separate from it. And something extraordinary happens when the inner movement stops. Time has nothing left to attach to. Time is built from thought. Consider this carefully. How do you know time is passing right now? Because your mind compares this moment to the previous one, the present to memory, the now to anticipation. Time is not something you see directly. It is something your mind constructs through change. Remove comparison, and the sense of duration weakens. Remove memory and projection entirely, and the psychological experience of time collapses. In Samadhi, memory is silent. Projection is silent. There is only undivided presence. Without mental markers, there is no before and after. Only now, without edges. Modern neuroscience offers intriguing hints. Your brain tracks time through neural oscillations and pattern recognition. It notices change. It registers novelty. It sequences events. But in deep meditation, neural activity becomes highly coherent. Internal chatter decreases. Sensory input reduces. The brain stops marking transitions as intensely. Advanced meditators often report sitting for hours that feel like minutes. But Samadhi goes further. It is not altered perception. It is absence of temporal referencing altogether. The mechanism that says this is passing is offline. Time in physics is not absolute. Now consider physics. According to relativity, time is not universal. It stretches and compresses depending on speed and gravity. Two observers can experience different durations for the same event. Time is woven into space-time, a dimension intertwined with space itself. Some interpretations of modern physics even suggest that past, present, and future coexist within a larger structure. The flow of time may be a feature of consciousness, not the universe itself. If time is linked to motion and change, then what happens when inner motion ceases? In Samadhi, inner motion stops, and so subjectively time does too. Here is something even more profound. Time requires a reference point, a me who existed yesterday, a me who will exist tomorrow. The continuity of identity creates the continuity of time. In Samadhi, the sense of personal identity dissolves. There is awareness, but no narrative self. Without narrative, there is no storyline. Without storyline, there is no timeline. Experience becomes a boundless field without coordinates. Imagine floating in infinite space with no stars to orient you. How would you measure direction? Now imagine awareness without mental landmarks. How would you measure time? There is a quiet insight often reflected in contemplative traditions. Time is a footprint of movement in consciousness. When consciousness moves, thought arises, memory forms, time appears. When consciousness rests in itself, unmoving, the footprint vanishes. The yogi does not travel into the future. The yogi does not freeze the clock. The yogi stops generating the internal movement that produces time. Yogic scriptures describe Samadhi as eternal, not because the body lives forever, not because clocks break, but because the experience has no boundary. Eternity is not endless duration, it is absence of division. When moments are no longer segmented, experience becomes indivisible. Indivisible experience feels infinite, not long, boundless. There is no waiting, no urgency, no decay. Only presence, full, luminous, complete. What's fascinating is what happens afterward. The yogi returns. The body has aged slightly. The sun has moved across the sky. Hours have passed. Externally, time continued normally. Internally, there was no sense of passage. It is similar to deep sleep, except awareness remains awake. In sleep, time disappears because consciousness dims. In Samadhi, time disappears because consciousness becomes absolute. For many people, the idea of losing time feels frightening. We cling to duration because it gives structure to identity. If time stops, who are you? But yogis describe Samadhi not as loss, but as freedom. When you're not racing against time, something relaxes. The constant pressure of not enough dissolves. The fear of endings fades because endings belong to sequence and sequence belongs to time. You don't have to reach full samadhi to taste this. Moments of awe, watching a sunrise, deep creative flow when hours pass unnoticed, profound love where everything else fades. In those moments, time thins. Why? Because the self-referential mind quiets. The less you are thinking about yourself, the less time dominates your experience. Samadhi is simply that principle perfected. Here is a deeper revelation. Perhaps time is not a tyrant ruling you. Perhaps it is a byproduct of how tightly you hold on to thought and identity. When the grip loosens, time loosens. When the grip releases entirely, time dissolves. The yogi does not conquer time. The yogi sees through it. And what remains is not emptiness. It is fullness, beyond measure. So why does time stop for yogis in Samadhi? Because time, as you experience it, is woven from mental movement, memory, anticipation, and identity. When those movements cease, the fabric unravels. Clocks continue, planets rotate, but inside there is only the eternal now, untouched by seconds. If this expanded how you understand time, share it with someone who feels constantly chased by it. Like this video if you ever had a moment where time seemed to vanish. And subscribe for more explorations into consciousness, reality, and the mysteries that begin when the mind becomes still. Because maybe time never stopped. Maybe you just stepped beyond it.